Welcome to the No Pressure, No Diamonds podcast, where entrepreneurs come to harness their struggles, doubt, fear, negativity, and setbacks. They place pressure on the blessing of adversity to become the strong, fearless, excited, passionate winner they were destined to be. A diamond.
We back once again, man. What's going on, man? My name is Alex Rose. I got my boy here,
Thomas Solano.
and this is the No Pressure, No Diamonds podcast, and we have a special couple here with us today, and I'm just so excited to have these folks here. And it took a little bit of massaging, to get them this. Nah, I'm just playing, man. It was amazing, and it's great to have good friends and great people in your life, and I'm going to talk about a story before we get into it, man. But we have an amazing husband and wife couple here. Great, great family, people leading an amazing family, pastors of a church, authors of books, and have led people. It's amazing to be around people that have led people before, and we have the amazing Corey and Latorra Saxton here joining us in the No Pressure, No Diamonds podcast. How you guys doing?
Doing wonderful. Happy to be here. Awesome.
Glad to have you. And man, today we're going to talk about is agreement. We're going to talk about learning how to agree as a couple, but not only just in a relationship, but also in business, which is also a relationship, and how to work together. And we're going to talk about a lot of things included with that too. But we're excited. So first thing I want to ask you guys before we start diving in is, how did you guys meet?
We met through a mutual family friend. We knew each other. Latorra was just getting out of high school. I was already in business. So she was like a kid when I met her. So we were just friends for about 8 years, just mutual friends, and became prayer partners, business partners in that process. And then at the end of it, life partners, right?
Right. And I think, when we first met, we were so young. And I think at the time I was 18, he was 21. And it doesn't feel like a giant gap, but he was so much more mature in terms of life. And so for me, he was like my big brother. He always looked out for me. He always told me, you just school somebody on game. No, don't mess with this dude. Don't, that guy right there.
But he was setting himself up there.
I think he was a little bit. I think it was
now I realize you just hating.
He was grooming me to be his future wife. No, but he was just a great friend. He always looked out for me, and he was just always kind, always genuine, always honest. And honestly, we were not each other's type whatsoever. Now we are, because we're married.
Wait a minute. Are you going to be just entering new stuff in our relationship on the podcast? I wasn't your type. She introducing new stuff to me right now. We going to need some marriage counseling after this.
No, I know for sure I wasn't his type, because he verbally said it. And so it was just, but I think because we had that sort of bros relationship, that's what's made us great in terms of being married and being partners and being best friends, because there was literally, I wasn't sent. Y'all tell me this. Let me get y'all opinion. So one day, this is during the friend zone situation, and we were legit just friends. And one day he notices I have freckles, and he goes, "Wow, you have freckles. You're so beautiful." And I was like, "Okay, that's a little weird, but okay." And I said, "Thank you." And he goes, "Wow, you have really nice lips." And I was like, "Thanks." And then he was like, "But not my kind of lips."
Hey, man.
Who says that?
Corey's the master of the takeaway.
Exactly. Who says that? I was like, you just could have just kept it to yourself, kept all of that to yourself.
Oh, my goodness.
But then as we started growing together, and then, him falling madly in love with me, he just started saying, "Oh, you definitely have my kind of lips," and that kind of thing. But it was just, coming together as friends.
Yeah, just
first.
friends for 8 years.
Wow.
Never dated, never were interested in that way in one another. It wasn't until, and I think we'll talk about this, until she got sick, and I realized that she was much more to me than just a friend, but just friends for 8 years, man.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's like a real slick way to make the first move. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what, man?
Keep everybody else away. Corey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might have been some of that going on.
Not
Now that I
that
look
guy.
back, but I don't
It's like really playing the long game, you know? Let's see how long we can go. 8 years, that's a long time to just be like dropping. You know how they say, like, with if you're in business and you know, prospects and you just water them, and then, you know, you keep watering and keep dripping on them. And I think that's what he was doing with me, just dripping a little bit of consistency and love and kindness.
What's interesting though, we were both involved in each other's relationships, but we were each other's people because we were dating these, I don't know, foolish people, I guess, and we'd come to each other, and this was a safe space.
Yeah,
you know. So I don't recommend it for people that are in relationships to have a person of the opposite sex, but it was God ordained. Like he knew what he was setting up because when she would need relief, and we weren't like saying, "Oh man, that person's an idiot, you should leave him." We were trying to keep one another in these dumb relationships. So it was actually like pure of heart and everything. She was dating this guy, and I'm like, nah, just give him a chance. He's maturing. Maybe you're just a little further in life than him, and he'll come around. And it wasn't until the very end of these relationships where the writing was on the wall. We're like, yeah, save yourself. Burn the bridge. Burn the boat. Get out now. Get out.
Y'all was playing that us, so you make me want to.
Leave the one.
That's what ended up happening. Leave the one I'm with.
That's what ended up happening.
And you know, honestly, like we ended up simultaneously deciding to just, like, we both made a decision to walk with Christ. We're both Christian, and we were intentionally like trying to grow that relationship. And we both said we're going to be.
How raw do y'all get on this show?
I know. How do you get?
Oh, just go.
We're like no sex, no drinking. Not that we were doing like living like debaucherous lifestyle or anything like that, but we were. I mean, I was 20 something years old, young 20s, and she had entered in her 20s. So we're like, all right, look, we're gonna be celibate. And we had one other friend, and we called ourselves a trio, right? You know, and we were like supposed to be holding each other accountable. And when it came down to it, Latorra was the only one that was sticking to all the stuff.
but he was trying to keep me accountable. Like, I'm literally the only one that's now out here in these streets. And he'd be like, "Where'd you go?" And I'm like, I know your life because I keep on finding you slipping up like on dates and hanging out. So, but we decided both like, okay, let's just live a life for Christ. And then so it was very much so like I wasn't dating anyone, and neither was he. Well, he wasn't supposed to be, but he wasn't dating anyone really either. And so we really were in the purest forms of ourselves. And we were growing individually. So it wasn't a matter of like, there was no distractions and there wasn't anything to make it murky. As far as like having a physical attraction or having a physical like intimacy that just wasn't, it would have been out of time if we had got involved in that way.
Right. And
so we just started growing individually. And then because the commonality of like the things that we were interested in, we started, you know, we'd go to the same, you know, Bible study nights together. We'd go to prayer shut-ins together. We'd go to the same business meetings together. And before we knew it, every single meeting when it came to spiritually, emotionally, physically, financially,
our whole lives are intertwined.
Everything was all together, and we just didn't have the intimate part until we decided, okay, we're going to be together and married, you know. So
y'all was equaling that yoke up. That's what I like. That's like the epitome of of equaling the yoke. What they call it, being equally yoked, right?
Sure.
The epitome of that.
You got to grow together.
Wow.
Especially if you're young. But if you, like, let's say even if you're not young, you would have had to have grown and meet a grown person, because marriage is for grown-ups.
Right.
Like, we have a good friend that used to say that all the time. Because if you don't have a grown-up perspective, right, you're gonna be fighting and bickering and arguing. Not that we don't, but we know how to process it as adults and get through it and get over it. Yeah.
And fighting fair. I mean, when you cultivate a relationship of like genuine friendship, it's like you guys are bros. So there's a level of like of respect and friendship that you have where you're like, I won't go that far.
If you disagree, you don't break
disagree.
Up.
Like you don't be like
not talk to each other for,
or you don't talk about each other's mama, or you know what I mean. And we've seen it because we've done enough like marriage counseling and coaching where we've seen supposed like best friends in marriage like literally go out of bounds. And I'm like, you wouldn't, I know your best friend, and I know you would never say that type of language to your best friend. So why would you say that to your spouse? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I feel like there's this level of familiarity that can sometimes get in the way. But because we respected each other so much as friends, there's this level of like, I love you so much, I won't go that far. You know what I mean? And vice versa.
And I think the friendship factor is definitely overlooked in marriage. You know, we ask people, we do a lot of premarital counseling, a lot of postmarital counseling. So people who are going to get married say, who's your best friend? And, you know, we'll ask Alex. Alex will say, I don't know, let's say Zulu. And it's like, well, why are you marrying her? Why don't you go marry him then? Like, you know, as a joke, right?
Yeah.
But if you're not marrying your best friend, then in this process where we're mentoring you, we're going to teach you the importance of being best friends. And you better make her your best friend, unless this is going to be extremely difficult. When we meet with married couples and that are struggling, they're going through it, we ask them, like, who's your best friend? And they're like, I don't know. You know, it's like the reason why you're having this issue with your wife, one of the issues is because you guys haven't made up in your mind and practiced being best friends. Because you don't treat your friends the way that you're treating your spouse. You look at her as just your wife, but my wife is more than just my wife, right? She's my spiritual partner, mother of my children, my absolute best friend. So sometimes I have to wear the best friend hat, because you're not always being romantic. You're not always parenting kids. Most of the time, we're just in this friendship relationship, and we got to treat it as such, you know?
Yeah. And I think also we had early on, like if we're talking about the beginning, even before entering into any relationship, we always say like get whole, or pursue wholeness, you know, on an individual basis. And I remember coming out of a really crazy relationship, and I was praying to God and just trying to figure out, like, where do I go from here? And I remember just crying one night and just feeling like, man, God, don't you see me? Like, God, don't you hear me? And I'm just in this, like, I felt like I was just stuck in this relationship. And I heard the Lord say, like, if you will allow me, let me love you first. And he was like, and I'm going to show you, you need to have, like, your spouse is going to love you the way I love. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And then he showed me there are 3 types of love that the Bible talks about, right? So there's agape, phileo, and eros. And agape is unconditional love. He's like, your husband's going to love you unconditionally. And then phileo is like Philadelphia. It's like brotherly love. Like, we're going to be homies, be friends, right? And lastly is eros. And I think a lot of times, especially when you're young, eros comes first. Oh, you're cute. Oh, she's fine. Oh, you know what I mean? And then there's an attraction, and then there's this engagement. And before ever learning how to have that phileo style of love, or even loving each other unconditionally, then that's what makes it tough. But when you get married, at some point, whether you start off that way with agape first, or you have to, sometimes circumstances make you fall in love, like someone gets sick, something happens, and you realize, like, I love you in spite of. And so I feel like for Corey and I, we had the privilege of learning love the way that God loves. And he loved me first unconditionally. Like, it didn't matter what, obviously I had some health challenges, and he was just like, I'm here. I love you unconditionally. He was my friend. Like, he literally, I'll tell you a quick story, and then I'm gonna let y'all get back to asking questions, because I could totally take over this thing. But quick story, I was so broke coming out of a relationship. You ever make a decision and like, I know this is the right thing, but it's so uncomfortable. And I had pride in my way. And so coming out of this relationship, I was so broke, literally, and broken. And my pride was like, I have to keep up this exterior and this facade of like, I got everything together. I'm this young business person, right? And so we're leaving a meeting, right? And we're talking, we get in the car, we're on the phone, we're talking about our dreams, we're talking about our goals. And I'm like, I got to get gas. And like, mind you, I have $0 in my bank account. Like, it's negative. And my car, it's not just that I'm on E, it's flatlined. Like, there's no like 5 miles to empty. It's like blip, blip, blip. Like,
it's all fumes. Like,
literally, you're running.
Saying, are you crazy?
Yeah, like, literally. So he goes, so we're getting off the 5, and I go to get gas. He's like, oh, wow, you got to get gas. And mind you, we're on the phone the whole time. And I'm just going, God, I don't even know how I'm going to get home. That's how broke I am. So I get off the freeway, and I sit in my car, and he starts pumping his gas for his car. So after he's done, he comes up to me. He goes, I'll pump your gas for you. And I was like, nah, I'll just wait.
I'm about to sleep there. I don't care.
I'll just wait. I'm like, my pride won't let me tell this dude I'm so broke. And so I said, he's like, no, seriously, like, give me your card. And I was like, I just burst into it. I don't have any money. And he was like, what were you going to do if I left? And so I was like, I don't know. And I was just a mess. I just started crying, and I was telling him how I was finally transparent and vulnerable with my best friend and telling him exactly what was going on. And he like had tears with me and was like, don't ever be in this position. And we always talked about, I don't know if you guys have seen the 5 Heartbeats.
What, Big Red?
No. So there's a part where one of the members, Dresser, was trying to quit because he had like life to take care of, and then they wouldn't let him quit, and they like all of them put like they had money in their hand, and they gave him a handshake and was like, you can't quit, and they all start crying. And it was like that. He took all the money out of his pocket and he shook my hand and like put the money in my pocket. And he was like, you'll never go without. As long as I have, you have. And he gave me like the tough like football talk. And I was like, okay. And then like from that moment on, I was like, he's my best friend ever. Because I don't know how I was going to get home.
This moment just reminds me of that. You never paid me back. You still owe me?
Yes.
Oh man, that's cool. Man.
But vulnerability and transparency is so important. And I think if you can get that early on, it makes for a real authentic friendship. And so, yeah, he was my best friend.
You talked about being whole, right? So what are some, and I'm not sure if it's just like a step-by-step or just a process somebody goes through organically, but how does somebody that is broken help themselves to be, whether, I don't know if they can help themselves to become whole or get around people that can help them become whole or get in an environment, but what are some of the best ways that somebody can
It's both, man. So many things we learned in business transfer to life success, right? So in business, we would hear faith, family, business, right? I was going through a process and I wanted to be whole myself. I was in another business when I was young. I started a website business when I was 18. I started at 19. I had it till I was about 24 years old. Extremely successful financially early on. Then the dot-com boom hit and it wiped me as well as many other business owners out of business. So now I'm a young guy. I was used to making money and I had an identity crisis because I just wasn't making any money anymore. So it was before I went into the financial industry. And that's why I went into the financial industry, because I didn't know how to manage my own money. So I was a client first, and then they said, well, we can help you to help people and you can make money. I said, well, if I didn't know this stuff and I felt like I was loaded before, then everybody doesn't know this stuff. So I said, well, it's not just money, though. Like, I'm not just after money, because I wasn't happy, or I thought that I'd be extremely happy and it'd take away all my problems because I had money. But I was 21 years old and tons of money in the bank and still searching for identity.
Sure.
Right. So when I got into business with Transamerica and started learning from some of the top leaders there, and I said, oh, you got to have balance in your life. Right. So faith, family, business. I said, but there's more than that. So we developed what's called a blueprint, and we still call ourselves a blueprint, and our church is a blueprint church. So I think to be whole, if you focused on just these 5 areas, right, and there's plenty of things you can be looking at in life, but if you only paid attention to these 5, you'd be more than all right. Right. So first, your faith life, right? And getting your spirituality right. Again, my wife mentioned we're Christian. So God first in everything. We put God first in our lives, God first in our family, God first in our business, and all fulfillment, because, again, money won't do it. I mean, how many people you see marry a person that they call their soulmate one minute and then they're divorced the next minute, right? So another person won't fulfill your happiness, right? So if you just have God in all of these relationships, God in your business, right? God in your personal business, in your financial business, or whatever business that you're in, then, only God can give you that type of fulfillment, so, and then it's your faith, your family, your finances, your fit life, and then focus meaning your dreams, your goals, your purpose, and really keying in on why you're here. Because if you don't know that, I mean, imagine I ran into a guy a couple of years ago, and he's 70 something years old, 75, 76 years old. And I'm talking to him about these things, and he has this moment. His eyes fill up with tears. Now, we're over his family's house. It was his kid's house, and he has grown, successful children. He's worked a long, successful, fulfilled life financially. He's retired. His kids had a good life. His grandkids are running around. Now he has great grandkids, but he says, I don't even know what my purpose is. You're talking about purpose, and man, I worked and we vacationed and I have some houses and property and all this stuff, but it's not just money. His family, it didn't fulfill it for him. His money didn't do it for him. He didn't know why God put him here, right? And I said, well, no better no better time and opportunity to find out except for right now. So he's on this journey to figure out who he is at 70-something years old, so that's a part of it as well. But again, faith, family, finance, fitness, and focus, and in that order. And I think that if you have a game plan in each of those areas, then that will lead to wholeness.
Yeah. Ooh. And that was good. I feel like you just like low-key preached a sermon, kind of. It was so good. Yeah, so I think that there's those little steps to get there, right? So we talk about the 5 F's, talk about but what do you do to get there? Like before you can even make those steps. And I think a large part is like I start with prayer. You know what I mean? We start with prayer. And there's this element of sitting quiet long enough to hear what God has to say about you. And I think because we're in a culture of just move, get it done, especially if you're in business, if you're like, you're hustling, and then you just don't spend time just really. And then a lot of times when you sit with yourself and you try to pursue like, who am I? Like, what does it take for me to be whole? And some of us have these like areas that are dark spots. Whether it's trauma or things have happened or our upbringing or experiences, and we shove that to the side and we figure, okay, let's focus on all this other things that I have control over, business, how much money I make and all that. But in reality, all these things that are like these dark spots that we think are hidden actually contribute and control the limit to which you can actually achieve, whether it's business, relationship, and all those things. And so I always say, take some time for yourself. Especially when I talk to women, get whole meaning sit long enough with yourself. And then if you're in a space where you're like, this is so hard, I don't even know how to do that, find somebody. So if you have a friend who you respect and you can model your life after them, a mentor, find somebody to help you, navigate that. And find a therapist, like a professional who can actually walk you through some things. And so wholeness looks like a whole lot of stuff, but honestly, it's not a lot when you just sit and take a moment and go, I'm going to work on one thing every single day.
It's funny. I'm actually preaching on this stuff on Sunday, right? Tune in or come to the church. Right?
Dude, I need to listen in and I'll let you go. Go ahead. Good.
Now, healing, we have these gushing wounds, right, from either childhood or from past relationships, and people have not dealt with things. So we're living with trauma, and we have Band-Aids on bullet holes, right? And society tells you, especially as a man, right, toughen up, get over it, and those kinds of things. But you can only push it down for so long because the junk starts to rise up. And if you get into a situation or circumstance that vaguely reminds you of it, right, then all of a sudden you turn back into that 12-year-old boy who saw your dad beating on your mom, or you turn back into that 30-something-year-old guy that wife walked out on him, right? So we're dealing with these things. And again, we say, take it to God, because God will begin this healing journey and process with you that will lead you to your wholeness, because how many people are out there pretending, just acting like we're over stuff, or, I'm not bothered by that anymore. No, if you haven't processed that trauma or begin to deal with it and be honest with yourself, what was your part in it? Because some stuff we had a hand in, but some stuff, man, like especially when you're kids, there's people that go through some dark and ugly things that they couldn't protect themselves from. But if you don't deal with that, and begin to talk to somebody, because sometimes, like she said, you need some therapy. But God's the ultimate therapist. But then they got people that are paid professionals you need to sit with and process. And then you start figuring out things like, man, that happened to 3 out of 4 boys that in that age group, the similar thing, not being picked or being physically or sexually abused or assaulted or things like that. So we got to deal with those wounds, because another person won't close the circle for you. So we take our damaged selves into these relationships, and we're bleeding all over each other, causing further damage in our marriages, bleeding on our kids, not being able to be whole parents. Well, my dad talked to me this way, and now you're the same thing that you said you'd never do is the way that you're governing and parenting your kids, yelling at them and cursing at them and all kinds of things. So it's just, you gotta be healed first. And then your healing will lead you to a wholeness. Got to do something for you first. He'll heal you of those wounds, right? Whatever happened to you when you were, let's say, a kid, he'll heal you first. And then when you're whole, after he does something for you and heals you, he'll do something with you. And you'll be the safe place for other people. You'll be the spokesperson for that thing. How many people do you know out there that were overweight, but now they're the fitness coaches? How many people you know were the drug abusers, but now they're the drug counselors? Like, he did something for them. He got them off the dope, right? But now they're, open up an agency where tons of people can come and have a safe place, and they can eventually get off it as well. Works it out in every aspect in life, in relationships, in business. How many people were broke in business, broke individuals, but then they just stuck it out long enough, and now they're on the stage and they're talking to stadiums of thousands of people, helping them to get healed first and then whole.
It's you guys are here for me. I'm gonna just say that because I was driving to Bakersfield for an appointment yesterday, and the whole drive to and from was just quiet. And it was intentionally that way, Latorra, like you mentioned. Like, I was trying to find quietness. But although there was no outside sound, inside it was going berserk. And really, I wanted it to be quiet so that I can hear, like, what do I need to do? I've been struggling so much, you guys, with like my long-term vision. Like, what is it exactly that I want to accomplish? And we've talked about this. I was talking about this with you and Zulu. I almost feel guilty that I want to be selfish about it. Like, I really want to focus on me, but as a husband and a father, I keep putting it on like as far as accomplishment, I keep wanting to attach the end result being bettering my wife and my kids, kind of circumstance or situation or whatever, like just being better for them. But there's a part of me that says, hey, I need to focus on myself, and I can't seem to do it, and I don't know why. I struggle so much with these dreams and goals for myself or whatever, and there's a guilt there. I don't know where that lies from. So I guess my question would be like, how is there a series of questions I got to ask myself and answer when I sit down in quietness? Because I pray, and then sometimes I question whether I'm praying properly or not. Because I don't know if I know how to pray because I'm not listening because I'm so distracted. Like, there's a lot of holes, and I don't even know if I got a full Band-Aid on it, man. It might just be a little gauze or something, and lacking the tape. But you're really here for me right now, and I hope that, I don't know if there was a question in there, but what would you recommend for somebody that is struggling to figure out that long-term vision, that goal, like being whole, and how to pray and those types of things?
So I'll jump on it first, and then you can jump in. But I had to realize, because I was asking these questions of myself, right? And God eventually told me, like, hey, listen, I'm the creator. I'm your maker. Every maker creates what they create with a purpose in mind, right? The toaster is not trying to figure out what I'm here for, right? The person who crafted the toaster set it up to be a toaster. Right. So when I finally got it, that my purpose isn't going to just come from within, as I've heard, or I'm just not going to make it up, because what if you guess wrong? Right. What if you intend something to be your purpose? I thought my purpose, because I grew up single parent household, we didn't have much of anything. So I thought if I would have all this money, I'd be fulfilled. By the time I was like 20 years old, I was making over $250,000 a year. And then the next year, $500,000. So, and I had all this money. And I wasn't fulfilled, didn't know who I was. It wasn't until I lost everything is where my joy came back, right? It's funny because when I had everything, I was so confused, and I'd go buy stuff thinking that, I had a couple of cars, and I'd be out in Vegas. I had a girlfriend at the time, and I'm buying her a bunch of stuff, and everything was only temporary. There was no permanent, happiness or joy. When I lost everything and I didn't have that pressure to try to figure it out anymore, and I sat with myself And I started asking God these questions. What's my purpose? And first he did something for me. He kind of put me back together, gave me the blueprint. I started living that out. I became healed. I became a whole person. I was comfortable in my own skin and who I was. And then he started doing something with me. My purpose became helping other people to find their purpose, to find God first. And then as you find God, he puts you together and tells you who you are. Right. So I stopped asking myself and started asking God, so that was the process for me, man. I just started listening. How you properly pray. I had to learn this too. I was talking too much to God, and God was just patient. And Holy Spirit, he's a perfect gentleman. He's not going to interrupt you. He'll let you ask anything. But like any good father, right, eventually he starts saying, okay, stop talking so much. I hear you. Now listen to me. Mm-hmm. So most of my prayer life now is listening. Prayer is a conversation with God. God knows more than me. He knows what I want. So I used to go to God and tell him what I wanted as if he's some genie and expect him to do it for me. So I'm praying for these outcomes. Like, God, if you just give me more money and all this stuff, and I'm trying to convince him, and I'm praying boldly before his throne, right? And God is like, no, listen, you can petition me. You can ask me for anything. The Bible says that you can ask for anything in prayer. But now it's all about listening to him. I said, God, what do you want from me? Yeah. Instead of, God, I want to make $1 million. God, how much money would you have me to make? And then what's the purpose when this money hits my account? What am I supposed to do with it? Mm-hmm. Right. And that's what my prayer life is like. And I'll just wait for him to answer. If I don't get an answer, I'm living on the last instruction he gave me. Right. Keep fighting hard for my family. Keep fighting hard for people to give their life to him and to get on track with who they are and who he's created them to be. And then he'll introduce something new. Okay, now I want you to write this book that explains this. Right. So I'm in the process of doing that. Now I want you to support your wife in her venture and telling her story and things like that. Right. So I just listen, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think too, it's interesting. We got, I've been walking with a group of ladies through a discipleship process. And one of the things before we started the process, I was like, okay, God, what am I supposed to talk about? And obviously we're in a pandemic, and how do you even meet and connect with people? And I love hands-on. I love for someone to sit with me and we cry it out and whatever it takes. And God was like, no, you can be still intentional. You can still be effective. But before you even have strategy, you need to ask me first. And so I asked him, okay, your daughters need you. What would you have for me to do with them? And then I didn't hear from him. And I was like, okay. So then I started praying, and the Lord was like, then he started downloading stuff to me. And like some of what you said, I think most of us are wondering purpose and why am I here? Like, what am I supposed to be doing on this planet? Especially if you have family and you have your kids and your wife or whatever is your purpose. And so I was talking to a bunch of women who were in that same kind of predicament, and the Lord was like, they don't know who I am. Because if you understand who he is, and like, not to make this all super spiritual, so I'm gonna try to tailor it, but I'm not. I'm gonna tell you the truth.
Please do. Yeah. Go ahead. So,
if the Bible says that we are fearfully and wonderfully made in his image, then who are we not to think that we're amazing? All the things, all these amazing fruits of the Spirit that we subscribe to, right? And so I had so many, and I've felt that way too. Like, how dare I think that I can go be anything or do whatever, these audacious goals and dreams. And God is like, because I created you that way. Like if he says, I created you in my image. So if we think that God is dope and grand and amazing and all these things, and he said, I created you in my image, then why do we feel guilty for playing up to the creator and how he created us? And so I was like, okay, so now first it's like getting over ourselves, right? In a way, like, oh, you have a real big plan and a purpose for my life. Okay, let me get that. Let me absorb and let me feel differently about myself. And so the way to get past that is sometimes we have shame and condemnation because we feel like we're not enough, we're not qualified enough, or we've made decisions, or we've had experiences, or where we're like, I don't fit that. I don't fit into the crowd of people that God actually is talking about. We separate ourselves as if we're not good enough. And God is like, no, I created all of you in my image. So you have a plan and a purpose. And then once we get that, acknowledgement. Like, I think in anything, like if you're struggling with addiction, the first thing they say is not like go to the program and get better all of a sudden. It's like, no, the first step is admitting you have a problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Acknowledging that there's something going wrong. So I feel like a lot of times it's just acknowledging, okay, God, I acknowledge who you are and who I am, and I accept, that those parts of me, even with me feeling like I'm filthy rags, like even with all of those things, I accept it. And from there, it's almost like there's an identity shifting, because now God can have a conversation with you, and it's like you're actually able to absorb what he's saying. But if you think that you don't have purpose or you don't have value in certain areas, then every time God is speaking to you, or someone else even is saying, you're great, you're amazing, it's just missing you, because you're like, that's not me. It doesn't apply to me. It applies to him, or it applies to him, but it doesn't apply to me. And God is like, no, I have something for you. So prayer and really just spending some time with him, but acknowledging, number one, hey, I am dope. I am amazing. And starting to practice what we preach in every office, affirmations every day, the stuff I didn't believe about myself. I didn't think I was pretty. I didn't think I was beautiful. People would tell me, but I was like, man, who do I even think I am? So I had to every day out loud say, I'm beautiful. And it would hurt to even utter those words. I'd have to say, I'm confident. And I would be afraid of certain things. I had to say that I was the best closer I knew, and I was afraid to ask somebody for a check. All those things.
For me, man, and back to your question, everything with me began with relationships. See, I had a relationship with church. I grew up in church. I had a relationship with religion, and God is neither of those things. He says that we are the church, and Jesus Christ came and he busted up religion when he was here, right? So the societal norms that we practice, I go to church and on Sunday and I do these certain things, that's ritual and routine, but it's all about a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, right? So when I began to develop that relationship, and it started off simple, we heard of 15 minutes of focus in business, right? I applied 15 minutes of focus in my faith to build the relationship. Talk to him every day for 5 minutes. We call that prayer. Read about him every day. We call it the Bible. And then I would sit in silence and listen to him 5 minutes. And then I would go out and obey. We call that worship. See, we think of worship as just singing, but worship is a lifestyle of worship. And most of worship is just being obedient to God. What we observe in church and we're singing, that is a form of worship, but we're calling out who God is. Like we're saying, you're awesome, you're amazing. But if you don't know him to be awesome and amazing and things like that, it's going to be awfully hard. But but how you get to know him as being awesome and amazing is building a relationship with him. Talk to him some, read about him some, listen to him, and do what he says. And then as far as purpose goes, he simplified it for me, and I teach it this way. Most of us have dated our purpose most of our life. God is intending for us to marry our purpose, right? So as a kid, I just had mentioned this, I used to go to work with my grandpa, who was a deacon in church, but he was a business guy, and he helped the community. Right. I grew up in a broken home without a father. So the reason why I was with my granddad is because I didn't have a dad at home. My mom wanted me around a positive man of God and an influence, so out of my pain. So it's either out of something that God wants you to be an extension of, or it's out of what you had a lack of. I grew up in a broken home. Right now, as an adult, one of the things that we have is a youth agency. So I'm a father to many kids. We father the fatherless because I know the importance and the need of the young men that didn't have a father. It's become a part of my purpose and who I am. I father the fatherless. She grew up like the Huxtables. I'm not kidding. Her dad is like the greatest man I've ever met. Loves God, loves his wife. He's a servant. He's a hard worker. This dude is still fit and athletic. I'm pretty sure at 60-something years old, he can still take me down. In impeccable shape, prays every day, works out, loves God, worked a great career, coached his kids, all of these great things. And her mom is just just an amazing woman. So I'm looking at, the example that she came out of. Her parents have been married for 41 years going on. She's supposed to be an extension of that, right? Grew up with great parents. She's supposed to be a great parent. I grew up with a lack. So it's either what you had an abundance of, you're supposed to carry it on, or where your lack is. Because I was with my grandfather, who was in church, like, God wanted me to have that part in my life. Like, I just grew up loving God a little bit different than other kids because they didn't have that relationship. Like, I got to see the man of God outside of church, and it made me say, I want to be like this dude. He made great money. I want to make great money. And then he owned group homes, and group homes are still in my family. My mom took them over, and they're literally, he was the father for the fatherless. So the things look back at your life and the experiences that you had. If you had a great family dynamic, you're supposed to raise great kids and use that as a foundation. If you didn't, you're supposed to almost do the exact opposite of what you saw and be that not only for your own family, but for other people. Like, so look at your own life experience, because again, God wants us to be an expert at who he's called us to be.
Right.
And you probably have been some version of it your whole life. But now he's going to give you an opportunity to continue being that, or to be something completely different than what you saw, right? But then to help other people along that way. Because again, think about it, man. I mean, all the people that you've listened to, they have these stories. Either they come from families that taught them business, and this is what they talked about at the kitchen table, and then they've become this. But most of us, right, in this type of business, like, you weren't talking about money, you weren't taught money, so God does something for you first. So you start making some money by helping some people. But now he's doing something with you. You're leading teams of thousands of people. You're on this crusade, and they pay you money to travel the country to just basically tell your story, to get people who make it to the tops of these types of companies. And now he's doing something with you, using you as inspiration, and telling people this is the blueprint, this is the roadmap, and this is how you overcome to get to this position. You just got to find your place in it, though.
Can purpose tied to, let's say, a gift, right? Because you said most people date their purpose, or is it more of like relationship and environment, or can your purpose be tied to a gift? And then if so, like, let's say you have a gift of speaking, right? Of communicating. How deep do you go into finding your purpose, right? Like, I'd like to say that I have the ability to connect with people, right? Like, and I always have since I was a kid. So how do I create a purpose from that? And then how far back or how deep do I go to find, like, okay, is my communication, does it need to be with children? Does it need to be with married couples? Does it need to be with other entrepreneurs? Like I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Welcome to the No Pressure, No Diamonds podcast, where entrepreneurs come to harness their struggles, doubt, fear, negativity, and setbacks. They place pressure on the blessing of adversity to become the strong, fearless, excited, passionate winner they were destined to be. A diamond.
So I wouldn't tie my purpose to any particular physical gift, but your natural giftings, like what you have as a connector. And I would definitely say that you had that. God is giving you that for a reason. I believe a part of who you are is supposed to be putting people together. It's supposed to be making people feel comfortable and bringing ease to every environment that you're in. So you use that to your benefit, right?
Okay.
But again, it's not about just our physical giftings. Like, people think, well, I'm tall, I'm supposed to play basketball. Like, not necessarily. Like,
right.
So don't look at what you do naturally with your physical giftings as what's going to lead you to your purpose.
Okay.
But it's the intangibles. Like, you know what I mean? You got a heart. You love people.
Mm-hmm.
So a part of, I know what I know of you, what you're supposed to be doing to people is helping them to feel comfortable, loving people, being the best version of yourself, and helping them to become the better version of their self. Now, what lane you do it, I always say this, my wife has heard me say it a million times. Think of it as like a skyscraper, right? There's various floors. There's a basement level to your talent, and then there's the penthouse version of your talent. God wants you playing at the highest level that you can possibly play. But let's say you counsel. You can be a school counselor, or you can be a motivational counselor that writes books. And it doesn't really matter to God which one you choose, as long as you're counseling. It's your level of comfort, right? So you use the things that God has given you based on the experiences that he's brought you through, allowed you to overcome. You perfect that within yourself, and then you go and help and be that with and for other people, right? Yeah. That's typically how it would go.
And there's a great proverb that says that your gift will make room for you. It says your gift will open doors for you, right? And I think that even in our own personal, like, if you just do the things that you're passionate about, like you do the things that you're supposed to be doing, the things that you know are in you, you can't avoid it. Like, you can't shut it off. For me, I've learned that I do love coaching I love coaching people that are dealing with paralysis. I love helping people get back on their feet. And so I didn't know how I was going to do that. Like I thought, do I need to go to school for this? Do I need to pursue certain certifications and all this stuff? And then I just was like, no, I just need to do what I know to do, which is I can show up. And so that's step one, show up. So I started showing up places and just going, all right, I can help. However, the stuff that I know to do, I can do that. And then it became this exchange. So then there would be a need, and I go, okay, this person needs this. Where do I go study and get better at it? Then I'd come back, and then all of a sudden, before I knew it, I was getting fine-tuned as a coach. But in the beginning, I wasn't calling myself a coach. I was just literally helping somebody. And then all of a sudden, my gift, which is coaching, started to make room for me, and I started to actually raise my identity. In the sense of like, oh, I do have some value because people are actually going, man, I needed that, right? And so when we figure out those parts, all of a sudden I never thought of myself as an author or a writer because I wasn't the kid in school. I wasn't that kid. I know writers that are like, ever since I was in the 3rd grade, I knew I was a writer. 6th grade, I'm like, man, I couldn't wait to get out of high school. So my continuing education was all based off of like, do I absolutely have to do like in order to get a license, you have to study. I'm like, dang. And I barely did that. And that money was attached to it. And so, but then when I started sitting with people and realizing like, oh, there is a need here, then I started going, okay, how can I make myself like duplicatable? And that's what made me say yes to writing. So I say all that to say, like, our job isn't so much to have the whole, like, I think sometimes, especially if you're like me, where I'm a process person. So I'm like, tell me all the steps and then I'll get the finished product done. And sometimes the journey is the process. And so sometimes the go here, stop and perfect. So like, you work out, you're a fitness person. Well, I know you used to be. This might be taking shots.
I'm looking from the side. That's why I wore black today.
I'm like, no, you still look good, bro. But I know you as an athlete. And so there are things that I like. Number one, I've seen you overcome crazy physical challenges and still be able to do a sport. And then, but there's these things where you tailor your game, you know what I mean? So you're doing these little small steps to get better. And before you know it, you're more confident and you're moving. And then you realize, man, I didn't know I could run like whatever your position is. I didn't know I could run a point. I didn't know I could be the point guard, but you practice long enough and you realize I'm good at that. So if it's business, if it's family, if it's whatever it is that you practice, and you start just kind of focusing on these little micro wins that all of a sudden start stacking up, and then they become these major wins. I think so many times, most of us, our nature is to focus on the championship, when most champs are literally, if you ask, I've seen so many of these like type of podcasts. And I think one of the ones that I saw even Kobe Bryant do, where he was lit up talking about AAU. Like, he wasn't talking about climbing the ranks, like talking about different guys where he was picking them off, you know what I mean? And he talks about that with so much passion because that's where your championship is cultivated. And so I think if we focus more so on like, what am I supposed to be at the end of my life? What would you be pleased with? It's more so like, okay, right now, what can I perfect that is a small little thing that will literally put me on track to getting these little small wins that will add up to the big win to be what I'm supposed to be.
Right. And so many people I tell them this: don't link your purpose to a paycheck, right?
Right.
You do it because you want to make a difference. You do it so that you can change lives. Like, it may happen that you may get paid for it. But sometimes what you do as an occupation is just a means to an end that you can pay for your lifestyle. But then doing something that is meaningful for you is worth way more to you and other people than it is what you do for an occupation. So they may not be one and the same. Like, God willing, that the things that you're called to do, your purpose is your occupation. But what if it's not that way, right? What if you have to work a construction job, but you're passionate about, and your purpose is teaching, you're passionate about piano. So after you get off of digging ditches, you can teach a kid or two how to play piano. Are you okay with that, right? It's all about being content with who God has called you to be, because the person who you inspire may go on to be the next, I don't know, Liberace or whoever is the greatest piano player to ever live. Will you be okay with that? I think that if you look at it as, man, I got to make all this money and and you're trying to link this ultimate purpose and be on this world stage, that may not be what God has for you, but God has a stage for everyone. And if you play your position, I tell this story in the faith all the time. One guy invited Billy Graham to a tent revival. I don't know the guy's name, right? Everybody knows Billy Graham, right? If you're a Christian, Billy Graham has went on to save millions and probably in the hundreds of millions of people around the world, introducing Jesus to him. But one guy got him to a meeting. You think that guy is saying, man, I wish that should have been me. No, he said, man, I sure am glad that I opened up my mouth to extend that invitation that day. Does that mean that every life has purpose?
Man, if I take notes and go back and rewind and listen to that one more time, and that's fire. Man, I feel like I'm like having an out of body experience. I'm watching myself listen to this, man. This is hitting deep right now. And I wanted to, kind of take it to the next phase here and kind of talk about the book we have sitting right in front of us and talk about the story behind it. And we're not gonna give away too much, right? Because we need people to get out there and support. But I see a book on the table here, and the author, Mrs. Latorra Saxton, called "Today We Walk." So, what was the inspiration behind this book?
Wow. Honestly, it was like I said before, just spending time with people, coaching people, and realizing that there was value of my story, and I didn't understand completely. You ever been in those experiences where, like, I heard your story and I was inspired. Like, we were in, I'm talking about Alex, we were in Mexico, and he was telling me about this surgery that he had to have in high school, and how, like, literally how you overcame it, and like you grew like 2 inches after the surgery. And so as I was hearing, I'm sure you probably don't think of it like, man, because I was inspired by your story, So me, myself, when people would hear my story, I'm like, it's just my story. But I didn't know that people were actually being inspired by it. So when I started working with different folks and I would get these random, people always go, how do you meet these people? How do you get sort of connected with folks? And it's just people will hear my story and they go, hey, can you pray for this person, or can you talk to this person? They just had an accident, they got a spinal cord injury, and all these things. And so I started connecting with people and then coaching and mentoring. And then I realized, like, I wish that I had more time. Like, I wish that I had more availability to help more people. And this was put on my heart to write. Honestly, God just kept waking me up and was like, it would be 5 a.m. Right. And I'd be like, no, it's early. You ever just like try to, like how they say your arms are too short to box with God? So I was like, I'm not waking up. And he was like, okay. And I couldn't go back to sleep. So I was like, well, I'm up. I might as well start writing. So I started writing, and I didn't know how to write. I started with a yellow pad. Like, who starts writing a book with a yellow pad? But honestly, there is a thing with being like obedient, and sometimes people are afraid of that word because it feels like a punishment.
Right.
But I was like really diligent and obedient to doing the things that I knew I needed to do, but I didn't want to do. And so I started writing, and then along the way, everywhere where I turned, where I had questions, I was asking, like, I don't know what to do next. And then God would send somebody. I needed a computer. My brother was like, it was on my heart. Here's a computer. I'm like, what? And so it was all these things that led up to finally writing. And I love the fact that now I have something that I could, at least if I can't go to a hospital and see a person in person, I can say, here's a book. I had a person in business who I hadn't talked to in years who hit me on Facebook recently and was like, I saw that you wrote a book. I'm in San Francisco now. I can't personally get to you, but how can I get this? And I'm like, here's a link. So I think that's what has inspired me to get over myself, get over the fear, get over, am I enough? Who do I think I am? I know that there are far more people who are way more qualified to be writers, I felt. But then I was like, no, I just have to get this out. And it was like a baby. Honestly, it was like birthing a child in a sense, because every stage of the game is like, okay, when it finally came to pushing this thing out, it was labor. And not in the sense of like, I mean, writing is easy, but I felt like my book was Holy Spirit inspired in the sense where I was really praying and asking God, what would you have for me to say? I feel like there were so many facets of my story. Overcoming paralysis. How do you condense that into a few pages? And how do I honor the process in a way that not only is edifying to my creator, but also that when people grab the book, they don't just see my story, but they see themselves. They see themselves getting better. They see themselves asking questions about their own, these areas of life where they need to walk boldly. They need to get unstuck, so to speak.
Right. And then Revelation 12:11, right? Pastors, I got to give you one scripture at least. It said they overcame, right? They're talking about overcame the enemy by the blood of the Lamb, the word of their testimony, right? So the Bible tells us all about Jesus Christ, and then everyone has their testimony. Right. I didn't understand the power of testimony till I got in business. Part of my testimony was grew up broke, made a ton of money, and then I was flat broke after my business flatlined, right? And I didn't want to share that with people because I was embarrassed. But God did something for me. He healed me and allowed me to know that, hey, man, every experience that in life, it didn't happen, to me. It happened for me. Right, I had to get down that low because how am I going to help people to get out of a hole if I'm some rich dude that hadn't experienced that? So I had to experience loss in order to help people to gain their bearings and to understand financial. It starts with financial literacy and everything like that. So it was a perfect business for me. So people used to tell me all the time, right? My wife included, when we were just friends, tell your story. It's like I ain't telling people that I was broke. I ain't telling people that I was struggling.
Is that pride?
It's absolutely it's pride.
Yeah.
Right? And it was keeping me broke. Then I started telling people how broke I was, and now I help people to not experience what I experienced, either losing everything or how to build a firm foundation the right way financially. And then people started buying. It was really strange, right? So he did something for me. I wasn't broke anymore. Then he was doing something with me. I was building a team and coaching people and building cultures and speaking on stages and those kinds of things. Same thing with her. We were in business together, just getting things started. We were just friends. She got sick at 24 years old, unexpectedly. Like, she had this encounter with God January 26th of 2006, right? And she's like, man, when I go to work tomorrow, everybody's getting some Jesus and they're getting some of my business. Well, by that next day, she started experiencing tingling in her hands and feet. And over the next month, completely lost her ability to walk, right? So now she's on this faith walk and journey with God to where she's in the hospital. The doctors are saying things like, does she have life insurance? Because, you need to start making preparations the way that this is advancing. We don't think she's going to make it.
Scary.
Right. So she was literally on her deathbed, and then God began to speak to her. Like, the sickness is not until death, but so the Son of God can be glorified in it. He told her that he was going to heal her. He told me that he was going to heal her. Right. So we were just speaking life when it just looked like death. And over the course of about the next 10 and a half months or so, God brought her from a deathbed to a regular bed, to a wheelchair, and they sent her home and said, well, she's going to be permanently. She didn't die, but she's going to be permanently bound to a wheelchair, right? And even the walker was far off, but she went from the wheelchair to the walker to a cane with a brace to just the brace to now. You look at my wife's legs, and I'm not trying to get dudes to look at my wife's legs, but they're incredible, right? And she's gained full strength, and he did something for her. He healed her. Now he's doing something with her. She's an inspiration. She goes around and talks about healing and wholeness and uses her book as a base. And it's just incredible what God can do. But it's usually the similar pattern, man. He wants to heal you first, make you whole, and then use you to inspire other people who are along that same path.
Absolutely,
man. It does. Went from man running a 4. Now you're running a 4-4, huh?
Yeah.
Literally. But it is interesting though how people really follow people that come through the mud.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they really attach themselves to, like, if they can do it. It's something about somebody that's built something, then lost it all, then built again.
Yeah.
Or had the courage, to talk, even just talk about it. Because you saying that, man, that made me think about. I was like, oh snap! That was like you know, shoot, if you hit me, you didn't mean to miss me. That's a great kept saying. You know, but man, they hit me right between the eyes because sometimes I find myself like, man, I don't want to talk about that. Mm-hmm. I don't want to get emotional. You know, I want to let them all the way in because now they know the deepest depths of whatever I'm thinking. But you need to let people all the way in.
Absolutely. Yeah. Through that process, they understand not only the roadmap to get there, but they understand what makes you, right? I mean, because again, nobody's ever self-made, nobody's perfect, and sometimes from a stage, people can project this perfect image. Those aren't the ones that everybody's listening to. It's the ones that have a story. Like, you know, I came from nothing. I was built into something. I worked real hard at it, and now I'm telling you that you can do it. I mean, that's typically, it's like a great movie script, you know, like Rocky. Nobody's watching Rocky because Rocky knocked everybody out. No, Rocky came from the mud, right? You know, he got his butt kicked, and then he gets in the ring, he gets his butt kicked for 11 and a half of a 12-round fight. You know, he lands a haymaker, he wins, looks for his wife, Adrian, and it's gold. One of the biggest grossing movies of all time, because everybody has a story. Like, so many people, they're not coming from a perfect place. They're coming from a broken place. So they want to see someone that's whole now, you know, as an example, and they're asking themselves, how do I get there? And if you get up there and you misrepresent and say, oh, well, it's easy. Like, man, tell them it's hard. It's going to be hard, but you got to keep believing. You got to keep fighting. You got to be in an environment where people believe like you. Like, you got to lift each other up. Like, you got to stretch yourself further than what you ever imagined. You got to have some faith. You got to work hard, and then eventually you'll get over the hump. But when you're over the hump, shame on you for not showing people the road. Right. What if Harriet Tubman would have just escaped? Like, you know, the Underground Railroad was built of her and other people because they escaped and they came back and showed people the way. That's why we'll talk about her forever, right? But I'm sure there was somebody else that escaped and came back. What's their name? Exactly. We don't know them.
Yeah.
I think we don't know them.
I think
that's real.
What's so powerful, what you just said, I think my husband's superpower is vulnerability. Like, he is extremely great at being honest and vulnerable.
It is now, but remember, again, like I just shared.
Yeah, now
I didn't want to share nothing of me about myself before.
I used to just like tell your story, and he'd be like, "No, absolutely not." You know how like you know, one of my biggest things is like really going deep with people, and one of my goals, especially if people are hurting, I'm like, I'm gonna make you cry. Not in a mean way, but I want to make you cry so you can get to your truth, you can get all that out, so we can get moving. And I used to be like, certain things would happen and he would be unemotional. Like he couldn't cry. He couldn't like have an experience. Like everyone else is having this experience and he would just be so detached from his emotions.
You call it wearing the mask.
Wearing the mask.
I was very good at masking.
You know,
pushing
and just
down.
shoving everything down. But because I knew him back to, we were best friends. I'm like, I know that there's more. And finally, when something just broke and he just started sharing and being more vulnerable, that's when, honestly, I feel like his purpose got like even more cultivated because people started asking him, like, don't come and tell us like how a certain product works or how an investment works, or they would say, come tell your story in our office. You know what I mean?
Instead of telling them this is how this product worked and I'm getting all technical about it, I started telling them why I needed it. Man, I had some money. I invested in the wrong things because I didn't have financial literacy. I lost all of the money that I had. My business failed, but I had a family that I needed to support. I was a single dad at the time, so I needed some insurance. I needed it just like you as a dad. I needed it. Right. But then I needed my money to work for me, and no one would ever teach me because I came from the other side of the tracks. And these people gave me an opportunity. So now I carry that flag and I teach people just like us how to make their money work for them. Right. So I started connecting with them on that way. Everybody bought. Nobody
I'm ready to buy from you.
Nobody bought, but I was just telling them, oh, this is how this works.
Let me tell you how this works.
But let me tell you why I needed it.
Yeah.
I fell flat on my face because nobody came to my house. But my mom struggled because no one came to her house. God forbid if something would have happened to her and she would have died, we would have been orphans or hoping to live with friends or family or something like that because we didn't have anything in place. Right. So, I'm mad at the industry. I'm mad at these rich companies that didn't teach my mom. But now I got my mom covered and I won't let that happen to anybody else's mom because people's moms are dying. Right. And nobody that I know's mom is going to die without having insurance. Right. Need it for myself. Like, because my kids need to see me make something in my life. I can't just work for 30, 40 years and wind up in the same place where I started. No, we got to start saving $1 or $100 and make that 100 turn into 500 and so on and so forth. So I'm the champion for people that weren't coming for households like the one I grew up in, like the ones that we're sitting in right now. But you're going to look a generation from now, you're going to be able to put your kids in a completely different place than what, life has afforded you the opportunity to have, and that kind of stuff. People start buying, man.
Stories sell. Facts just tell, man. That's huge, man. And you're saying it, and I just can remember different conversations that I've had where I've actually gotten real with the person, and they're like,
you get the best results.
You get the best results. You get the best results when you're willing to go there with them. You're willing to go there with yourself.
Absolutely.
And allows them to open up.
Yeah.
And that's, man. And I think, we're kind of talking about that before, you're a man, you got to be strong, man. Nothing affects you, everything bounces off of you. Hey, ain't no crying over here. What's wrong with you?
And man, honesty is manly, right?
Yeah.
I had this volcanic like experience to where I was holding everything in and it was simmering. But it was an active volcano, right? One day the top just blew off. And you had all this lava just, floating all over the place. But then after that, and I don't know scientifically what the ground does, but then there's new life that can be sprung forth because of that. Same experience with fire. You have fire, a whole hillside will burn down, right? But then after that, you'll see the greenest trees that have ever grown on that mountainside. So there's something with allowing yourself, to be vulnerable and be exposed, let out all that stuff that you're holding in, all that lava that's underneath that rock, but once the top blows off and it goes down, then beauty can grow on top of it. And it's not just for you, but for everybody that's around would be able to experience it.
Right.
Man, I love it, man. This was fun. Today was so amazing, man. I want to just appreciate you guys for coming through. Today, and kind of as we close, I kind of want to let people know where they can find you guys. So
where can they find the book?
Yeah, we can definitely find the book for sure.
Yes. Well, thank you for having us. First of all, we love y'all and appreciate what you guys are doing. Just amazing. As far as how you can connect with me, I'm Miracle Saxton at Miracle Saxton on Instagram. You can get my book, Today We Walk, Overcoming the Things That Paralyze Us, on Amazon.com. You can also go to my website at latorrasaxton.com. And the actual book is in Romans in Pasadena. And and then on Facebook, I'm just under my name, Latorra Saxton, so you can always reach out that way.
And I'm pastoring full time now, right? If you want to get in touch with our church, because this is how we preach, right? I mean, I would have never gone into full-time ministry if I had to be anything different than what I was. God was like, okay, now you're ready. The reason why I was in business, I didn't know this before, was just to connect with people. It was more important for me to go out and talk blueprint with people and teach them about faith and family and all of those types of things than it was for me to become a millionaire, right, in business. But then God says, okay, you're mature enough, you're experienced enough. Now I'm calling you into full-time ministry. So my ministry runs just like my business. So our church is called Foundation Christian Ministries. We're in the city of Palmdale. On the east side of Palmdale, where the work is definitely needed. We're on 2714 East Avenue R, Palmdale 93550. You can find us online. Our website is thefoundationcm.com, thefoundationcm.com for Christian Ministries. And then on all the social platforms at the Foundation CM. So whether it's Facebook or Instagram, YouTube, just look up Foundation Christian Ministries and you'll find us. But I think we're doing phenomenal work because, again, we're putting God first. We're just being ourselves, not trying to pretend to be overly spiritual or anything like that. Yeah, we love God, but we're human beings. We're flawed just like everybody else. And our ministry speaks just like we're speaking today. Hey, listen, this is where I got it wrong. This is where God corrected me or built me up to. And then we just help people with just that, the things that we've overcome.
I love it.
Well, today was fun. Man, today is such a blessing, man, and I'm just excited for the listeners. I can't wait till this comes out. I cannot wait. We're about to promote the heck out of this one because people need to hear this today, or when they do hear it.
Can I just say this though about you two, man? You two are phenomenal people. I know you as individuals. I love the both of you. When Alex called and said, "Yeah, man, Tommy, you're doing a podcast," I didn't even know what we were going to be talking about today. It didn't matter to me. Most of the time, if somebody would ask me to speak, or even if I'm going to another church, I say, "Okay, what am I talking about? What have you been?" I got all these questions, right?
Sure.
But because it's you guys, because of the reputation that you have with me, because of the love I have in my heart for you, I said yes, and I told her, and we're absolutely going to be here. But what you're doing is phenomenal, giving people an opportunity to share their life experience, to share their story, to share their testimony, because it does something for the person, but all of the people that are going to be listening, you never know who's struggling with what. So just you being a conduit and an outlet so that people can get that expertise out, based on who they are and what God has brought them to, can be helping to save tons of lives, right? So just be encouraged, man. I don't care if it's 30 people listening, 30 turn to 300, 300 can turn into 300,000 and millions and so on and so forth. But just believe that this is a platform that God has called you to, and he can use it mightily, man. Put all you have into it.
Appreciate you, Corey.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
He got me emotional again because I think you've seen it earlier. My eyes started to welt up a little bit just because the message that you guys shared was and is impactful. And Latorra, every time I heard you speak, you made me tear up. So you got an incredible gift there. I actually love the emotion. But I thank you. I thank you for those kind words, and it's well received for sure.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming out.
Well, appreciate it. Well, everybody, you already know what to do. Please go like, comment, subscribe, share, tag somebody in the comments. Please go tag somebody in the comments, and you will also see in the description where you can buy the book. We'll have everything there, so you can go in and follow and purchase. Please go support this amazing couple in their business, in their church, and just go see them, because these are valuable human beings that are doing great things in the community, in the world. You can also go support the podcast as well, so the everyday person can go and support the podcast, man. At anchor.fm/no pressure no diamonds /support, and it'll help our podcast grow and continue to be able to have guests like this and to help us continue to grow. So, man, without no further ado, no pressure,
no diamonds.
Let's get it.